Welcome to Speak as One. I'm Julie Coriath, and today we have Art Acevado with us. Hello, Art.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good to be here.
Great. Art is a former police chief of Austin, Houston, and Miami, and then you were in California for a bit, too.
I was in California Patrol. That's where I started my career in 1986, and I spent 21 years with them, worked my way all the way from officer to chief, and then I came here to the great city of Austin back in 2007.
Yeah, that's. How do you like Austin?
I love it. It's a great city. I mean, I love policing. I love public service. I love people. So I've enjoyed every city I've been at.
And I want to say thank you for your service.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
35 years. That's a long run.
That's a long run. Yeah, absolutely. So we at Speak as One, and what we were just talking about is mental health. And I'd love to know about you and your mental health journey, and but really like where you were raised and when you started noticing.
Sure. Well, first of all, I was born in Cuba under the communist rule, and in 1968 we received political asylum here in the United States. We're in Austin, in Texas, where the great Lyndon B. Johnson came from this area, and he started the what we call the Bridge of Liberty and gave us political asylum. So in 12/12/68 we got here, raised to love this country, raised to love the greatest gift that any country can give a family, and that's freedom, right? Not to live under communism. And so I think that journey of being an immigrant, English being a second, my second language, Spanish my first language, life has always been very challenging, but because of our journey, I've always wanted to give back, and so that's why I dedicated my life to 35 years with law enforcement, which started with California Highway Patrol in East Los Angeles. I picked East Los Angeles because it was a high population of immigrants. I felt like I could make a difference there. And from there, I went to up to chief, up all the ranks, and I came to Austin as a police chief in 2007. Served almost 10 years. Went to Houston for almost 5 years. Another great town. Then I went to Miami, where it was a short stint, but I'm still glad I went there. And so, we deal with a lot of trauma, and I can tell you that. I my own trauma from all the things we've seen, but my employees' trauma and then the community trauma. There's three sets of trauma that you deal with as a first responder. That's your own personal trauma, which includes your family's trauma. That includes your employees' trauma, and then the third set is the community trauma with the victims, the witnesses of crime. And so I've dealt extensively with mental health, and I look forward to talking about it.
Growing up and coming here and English being your second language, did you start experiencing any sort of like mental health as a young kid, or anxiety or anything around that?
I can
looking back on it.
Looking back, as a child, you don't recognize issues, right? And by the way, whoever's watching this, we're all going to experience mental health challenges throughout our lives. It doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It just means that you're human. But sometimes we don't recognize it, and sometimes we're ashamed of it. So I can tell you as a kid, I still have very vivid memories of some of the emotional trauma of, Mr. Lexington in the 5th grade. I'm the only, really Hispanic kid in this classroom that was from Cuba, and telling all the kids, hey, Arturo is Cuban and they're all communists. You imagine how the most cruel human beings sometimes can be kids, right? They don't realize how cruel they're being, right? No. Including me. I mean, we all went through that phase, and that was some trauma, life trauma. And then, remembering my Mr. Morgan in the 6th grade, my favorite teacher. On Christmas break, I remember saying bye to him, and then all of a sudden, he died during Christmas break, and that was trauma for me. Because my grandparents had died before. All my grandparents were dead before I was born, because I was an unplanned child, and so all those things built up, and I think that it led to, at times, a little depression. Even as a kid, we all have. And this is normal, where you think, I just want to die, or you tell your parents you hope they die. That's all emotional. That's all part of the emotional roller coaster that life brings all of us. But then as you continue, then you start really, in the profession I chose, then you really start dealing with trauma.
Yeah, I appreciate the way you framed that, because like looking back on my childhood and stuff, I didn't know anything about mental health, and I thought something was wrong with me.
Right.
Growing up, I always thought that, because I didn't match what I was feeling inside.
Right.
And so I think that's such a very important message, that what you're saying is that there's nothing wrong with you. We all experience it.
Exactly.
And now that people have more freedom around talking about it, I think that's hopefully this can be one way that we're helping.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. So then growing up and then moving on to police force.
I experienced Mr. Morgan death, and again, in 6th grade. Then when I was with the California Highway Patrol, we had an uncle that I've named after Arturo, who lived with us because as immigrants, you're kind of poor, so we had our uncle living with us. And I was in the CHP Academy, which was a living academy, 5.5 months in Sacramento. We're from Los Angeles. And my uncle had committed suicide. And they didn't even bother telling me, my parents, because my family didn't want me to, they want to make sure, they tried to not tell me because they wanted me to graduate from the academy. They want to make sure it didn't interfere. So I graduated on August 7th. He went missing unbeknownst to me in late June, and they found his body in Ventura in a cave by a cave person going through. And so to me, that was the first time when I knew what a loving, just wonderful human being my uncle was, that really opened my eyes to mental health. And I was only a young 21-year-old kid, turned 22 that summer. And I think that that's the point in my life where I made a decision that I want to inform myself on mental health. I'm not going to run away from these issues. And as I went through my career and started promoting, I ended up, I would say, really pushing for mental health. Because when it comes to law enforcement, we're supposed to be tough and fearless. And in '86, when I became a cop, we didn't really have psychological services. We didn't have any of that stuff. I mean, there's nothing. And if you cried for help, you were ostracized. And I can tell you, my 35-year career journey, I'm very proud of the fact that our profession, law enforcement, in a lot of ways, has led the way to making things better and creating safe spaces for people to ask for help. And I'll look forward to talking about some of that stuff with you. Some of those watershed moments.
Yeah, thanks for sharing about your uncle. I'm really sorry about that.
Yeah, I had 2 uncles commit suicide, actually.
Wow.
It's just, for those that are watching, just remember that to me, suicide is a permanent step that is irrevocable to deal with a temporary problem. No matter what people are facing, I would think about the youth. We had such a problem with, and right now in Florida, there's this, you can't talk about being gay in Florida schools. I don't know if you've seen that. They just, imagine being an LGBTQ, a member of the LGBTQ community, and when I was younger, people were ostracized that community, so people couldn't talk about it. And one of my proud moments was here in Austin when I became the police chief. We recognized there's a lot of high incidents of suicide in that community, especially years back when people were closeted, they couldn't talk, they were discriminated, they still are to this day. So we put together a video called It Gets Better. It was a series of videos that police departments put together. It was really for youth. And we brought it here, and I would ask the viewers to go to just Google It Gets Better, Austin Police Department. I was so proud of our department because I got an email from a teenager that said I was going to commit suicide until I saw this video. And so again, I'm talking about suicide, but you know what? Anybody that's considering that, you're worthy, you matter. And no matter what you're facing, there's resources out there, and it will get better.
It will.
It really will get better.
Yes,
so,
and like you said, it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Yeah, so.
And as somebody who's gone through something very dark in my life, it does get better, and it just takes a little time. And if you're going through, let's see, the darkest part of my time was 3 years out of my whole life.
Yeah.
And it's taken really a good 2.5 to get to a point now where I'm like, I still, yesterday I was kind of just not feeling all that great, but it was a day. and it wasn't every day like it used to
Yeah.
be, because there are steps and there are ways to get help. And that, where I'm trying to go with this is 5 years out of my life compared to 100, not that long.
Yeah.
It's really not that long.
That's exactly right.
And just there's so much help out there now.
Yeah, and one thing that I saw on a TED Talk not too long ago that was brought to my attention was a speaker, and he said, every day you should sit down, no matter what your circumstances are, and articulate 3 things you're grateful for every single day. Mm-hmm. And if we got in that habit, it would help us understand that, I have this challenge, I have this issue, I have this going on, but Lord, I also have these 3 things. I just did that for the first time with my 13-year-old son yesterday at dinner.
So we do that every day in the car on the way to school.
Awesome.
I have my kids say, and sometimes, there are days where we're like, they're not feeling it, and that's okay.
That's okay.
You don't have to feel it. It's just
get it out.
In the
I
car.
think that's a really good exercise to have. And the other thing that I think is important, that one of the things that, because in law enforcement we have a tremendous problem with suicides. And one of the biggest fights I ever got in my career was over suicides with the California Highway Patrol. I was a chief. And there was a chief is the highest civil service rank. And we had about, my recollection, was about 8 suicides in 18 months of police officers. And I believe that because of the trauma, life is traumatic, but as a first responder, we have additional trauma. And I was arguing about the fact that we need to do what I call a psychological autopsy on these officers to see if the profession had anything to do with the depression or the issues that led to suicide. And the mindset of the other chiefs were like, hell with them. They took the easy way. I go, that's bullshit. We owe that to their... So am I supposed to say that?
Oh, yeah, no, it's totally fine.
Okay, all right, I'm ready to take 2. And I said, that's bullshit. We owe it to their families to find out that this officer, I can tell you, I remember going to the Santa Monica Farmers Market crash. A man by the name of George Weller, 80-something-year-old man, instead of braking, accelerates through some barricades, about 3 or 4 blocks, injured 70-something people, running them over, killed 11 people. For weeks, I was having nightmares about that scene because it looked like a war scene. You look a lot younger than me, but when I was a kid, they used to show you those Cold War videos where the drills for nuclear explosions, where you'd see where they detonate a nuclear bomb out in the desert in Nevada, and you see all the dummies, and they videotape it, and you see the wave coming at them from the nuclear explosion. That's the nightmare I would have for weeks. So don't tell me that that's not traumatic. And so I would say we have to do that post-traumatic, we need to do that post-mortem psychological autopsy to see what was going on. Did they just try to pull a kid out of a burning car that died in their arms? You know what I'm saying? So we started doing that. I ended up winning that fight. I do that as a chief. Sadly, I've had 3 suicides in my career, 15-year career as a chief. And the other thing that's really important is that I stopped talking about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And I started talking about, I read it somewhere, that post-traumatic stress injury. Because if you say disorder, that can have some, that connotates with something wrong. No, you have an injury. You have all this trauma, and it's an injury. And so I think that words matter. So we also have to be really careful about how we talk about these issues, because we want to encourage people to understand there's nothing wrong with you. What you're going through is normal. More people than you think are going through the same thing, and it's not as a result of anything you did. It's an injury based on what you've seen, what you've experienced, what you've smelled. Sometimes to this day, I'll get the smell of a burning flesh of people, of one scene in particular where a family died, burned to death in a car, and there's a very distinct order. That's still, I have flashback. Did you ever see the movie Crash? Do you guys remember the movie Crash, right? There's a scene there where the car is upside down, the SUV, and the racist and the African-American woman that was a character that was abused by the one cop character is in that SUV. It's about to burst into flames, and then he ironically has to rescue her. Do you remember that scene?
Yeah.
When I saw that scene, I flashed back to 1986 as a rookie officer by myself, where a woman on the Long Beach Freeway, southbound Long Beach Freeway at the 91. I'm an EMT, right? So I'm supposed to, I'm a new cop. I'm supposed to save the world. This woman died in my arms. And I flashed back to that years later watching Crash, and next thing you know, I'm crying. So the reason I share this with everybody is because life's a journey where you're going to have trauma, and at some point, it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah, and like you said, an injury. I love that you preface it that way because when you go and you get it, my daughter just fell the other day. We had to take her to the emergency room. They glued up her wound, right?
Yeah.
But when you don't heal that wound, or you don't take her to the emergency room, and you don't try and put the glue or the stitches or whatever, it's not going to heal properly.
Right.
So when we go through life and we have traumas, and we all will and do, and you don't go and get the proper help, that injury is not going to be healed properly. And if you have enough of those traumas, then you're just having all these different wounds inside your so that really, really, I resonate with everything that you're saying.
And it's important. I mean, mental health, too often as people, and I think cops are the worst, we because of physical health is visible, right? Physical fitness is visible, as you can tell, or lack of fitness in my case. But mental health, sometimes we don't see it, or we hide it, we mask it, and we forget that we need emotional health. There are times where we need emotional healing, psychological healing, and I'll never forget when I got to Austin, the chief before me, anytime we had a staff psychologist. But if the employee came to see the staff psychologist, the chief would want reports on what the employee was doing. Now, what do you think is going to happen? That has a chilling effect. And my philosophy has been, I don't care what you're seeing the psychologist for. I just celebrate you for seeing the psychologist. I had an officer in Houston that I get a call from the union that he has a complete psychological breakdown. He gets he is admitted to a unit, an inpatient unit, mental health unit in Houston. And when I got that call, I go, hey, I want to go see him. I want to go see him as his chief because I want to tell him how proud I am of him, that he had the courage to go seek help, and then tell my own journey. In 2003, I had my own bout of anger and depression when Arnold Schwarzenegger was going to make me commissioner of the Highway Patrol, which is a very political process, and the department tried to destroy my life. I could not cope with it myself. I broke 4 teeth. 4 teeth I woke up one morning broken from doing this.
From grinding and clenching.
From the anger and the nightmares and everything else. And I'm just glad that because of what I went through, Mr. Morgan, and recognizing some of the emotional issues that brought up and some of the teasing, and then especially with my uncle and some of the things I've seen, that I said, you know what, I need help. And I went and I saw a psychiatrist, and I saw one of his counselors that we're still to this day. It's been it's going on almost 20 years. We're still friends. And to me, what was really important about that journey was that talking to others, especially professionals, he taught me how to cope, right? Taught me that sometimes you can't control what happens to you, but you have complete control over how you react, and you have complete control of how to manage it. And so I can tell you that I really believe that going to Dr. Hutton and Bill Allen, my therapist that he assigned me to, they saved my life, because it was, one night I put my fist through a door. I was so angry about what this department did to me, that I said, I need help coping. And so it's important for everyone watching this. There's a point in our lives, whether we recognize it or not, where we all can use some help, and it's okay, because again, even if you're doing it yourself, you might, there's a good chance that you'll still be able to navigate through everything, especially if you have a good supportive family around you, because that's really key. But if you don't, there's plenty of help out there, and I would just encourage people to seek that help, because no matter what, again, no matter what you're at in life, everybody's worthy, and we're all special, and we're all unique, and society's in a different place today, where we recognize that it's okay to ask for help.
It is, it's being talked about more than ever. Did they teach you certain coping skills that you would mind sharing, or was going to therapy enough to just talking it out?
I think that having a non-judgmental, safe place to just let my emotions out, to talk about what I was feeling, to share what I was experiencing without any judgment, and to receive encouragement, right? It was really interesting. I remember this day Dr. Hutton said, you know what? Because I told him everything, right? And he says, at the end of this, when this is all over, you're going to come out ahead. You just have to stay focused, believe in it every day. When you get up, you need to think about the end of the journey and the fact that I promise you, you're going to end up just fine. And I think that reassurance and the ability to talk about my issues and my feelings and where I was at was just the reassurance was really helpful. And I think that's sometimes all we need is a little reassurance, right? And so and validation, right, from someone that they don't have a dog in the fight, right? So
right.
that and these folks know what they're doing. And what I'm really proud of my daughter is she's getting her master's now to be she got her bachelor's degree in psychology at Arizona State. Now she's working to get her master's in social work and counseling. So
Nice.
I think I can't wait till she gets. I think she's going to be phenomenal. I mean, she grew up with me, so
of course she's going to be.
She's going to be really good. She had dad, and actually she told me the other day, she called me out of the blue after my son's father-in-law died after a fall, really sadly. And she called me, started crying, and I go, "What's going on?" She goes, "Daddy, I never realized, your public service," and just said some of the sweetest things. I go, "You need to finish that degree. You just made me feel better about myself." She's just very special. But again, mental health is something that none of us should be ashamed of. We shouldn't run away from those feelings, but it's really important to find somebody that you can talk to.
Yeah,
because with the right person, the right help, there's really nothing there's nothing we can't overcome, right? And we only have one life to live, and so I would just urge people to just remember, Colin Powell wrote in the General Colin Powell that used to be Secretary of State and then Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff under George W. Bush. He wrote in his autobiography, his parents would always say, "Tomorrow will be a better day." So again, part of the coping is focusing on the fact that after every storm, eventually, and sometimes the worse the storm, the more beautiful that rainbow is at the end of that storm.
Yeah.
And think about that trial and that tribulation as, okay, I'm in a storm right now, but with the right help, I can withstand this.